Tucked away in a corner of the bustling wedding banquet hall, Julian Lu couldn't tear his eyes away from the bride, Isabelle Qin. He'd always known she'd be beautiful in a wedding dress, stunning even, but the reality still stole his breath. A faint, bittersweet smile touched his lips. He pulled out his phone, dialing a number etched into his memory. Across the room, he saw the maid of honor tap Isabelle on the shoulder, holding out a ringing phone. "Isabelle, it's for you." Isabelle took the phone, her brow furrowing slightly as she glanced at the caller ID. Her new husband, Adrian Lee, leaned closer. "What is it?" "It's Julian Lu," she answered honestly. Adrian paused for a beat, then offered a reassuring smile. "Go ahead, answer it. You don't mind?" Isabelle looked up at him, searching his eyes. Adrian's smile widened slightly. "You're my wife now, Isabelle. What is there to mind?" She gave him a playful glare before answering the call. "Hello, Isabelle." Julian's voice came through the line, low and familiar. "Is there something you need?" Isabelle kept her tone cool, neutral. "You look beautiful today," Julian said, his voice tight, with suppressed emotion. "Thank you," she replied simply. "Isabelle," he began again, the name itself a small ache. "Is there anything else?" she asked, a hint of impatience creeping into her voice. "Do you love him?" The question hung in the air, raw and direct. Isabelle froze for a fraction of a second. She turned, meeting Adrian's steady gaze. He was watching her, waiting. Her answer came out almost automatically, a reflex. "Yes, I love him." The word struck Julian like a physical blow, bitterness flooding his senses. He fell silent for a moment, the sounds of the celebration fading into a dull roar in his ears. "Isabelle," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper, "you never lost your memory, did you?" Isabelle's composure faltered, her expression tightening. "Isabelle, if you didn't want to marry me, you could have just told me," Julian continued, his gaze fixed on her distant figure across the crowded room. "Don't force yourself to marry someone you don't love." She took a deep, steadying breath. "Julian," she said calmly, "let the past stay in the past." He paused, the finality in her tone unmistakable. "But I can't," he replied, the words heavy with unspoken pain. Isabelle pressed her lips together, unsure how to respond. Just then, Adrian wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her gently closer. "Isabelle, darling, it's time for us to make the rounds." He smoothly took the phone from her hand, raised it to his own ear, and spoke directly to Julian, his voice polite but firm. "Julian Lu, Isabelle is my wife now. Please keep your distance." Without waiting for a reply, Adrian ended the call and slipped the phone into his own pocket. Isabelle stared at him. "So much for not minding." "Come on, wife," Adrian smiled, guiding her away. Julian watched them walk away, the perfect picture of a happy couple. His hand clenched around his own phone until his knuckles turned white. He closed his eyes briefly, then with a sudden, violent motion, hurled the device against the ornate wall. It shattered on impact, splintering into pieces on the marble floor, a mirror to the fragments of his own heart. Miles away, in a sleek, modern apartment, Stella Tian stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape. Her phone chimed with an incoming message. She glanced down. It was from Ethan Chun, Adrian Lee's close friend. "Stella, aren't you coming to Adrian's wedding?" A shadow of pain crossed Stella's face. Could she go? Of course not. She feared losing control, feared the storm of emotions seeing Adrian marry Isabelle would unleash. More than that, she feared the reaction of her own new, volatile husband. Thinking back on her actions, the elaborate scheme she'd concocted felt both audacious and absurd. She had loved Adrian Lee with a fierce, unrequited passion. Seeing his torment over Isabelle Qin, she had done the unthinkable, orchestrated events, crossed ethical lines, all to ensure he could finally be with the woman he loved. And she was now living with the consequences, married to a man she didn't love, a man whose heart she had deliberately helped break. She didn't regret giving Adrian his happiness, but the price had been steeper than she could have imagined. Julian stalked out of the hotel, his face a thunderous mask. Kevin Schur, his ever-present assistant, pulled the car up smoothly. Julian yanked open the back door and threw himself inside. "Back to the office, Mr. Lu?" Kevin asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Did you find it?" Julian demanded, ignoring the question. Kevin hesitated for a second, then reached over to the passenger seat and handed Julian a thick manila envelope. "Mr. Lu, it seems Miss Qin received some photographs just before her car accident." Julian snatched the envelope and tore it open. As Kevin spoke, the contents spilled out, photos, documents. His face turned ashen, then flushed with a dark, cold rage as he scanned the materials. Stella Tian. He had underestimated her quiet, intensity, her capacity for manipulation. So desperate to play martyr, to push Isabelle towards Adrian? Fine. If she wanted to interfere, she would learn the cost. If it weren't for her scheming, he would be the groom standing beside Isabelle today. Get Stella Qin on the phone, Julian commanded, tossing the envelope onto the seat beside him. Inform her she's expected at dinner tonight. Business. Kevin nodded stiffly. Yes, Mr. Lu. At 7:30 p.m., Stella Qin arrived at the exclusive restaurant, impeccably dressed, radiating a quiet confidence that belied her inner turmoil. Julian barely glanced at her, his expression coolly indifferent, before gesturing towards the man already seated at their private table. Mr. Zhao, Julian said smoothly, a predatory edge to his voice. You've often expressed admiration for Miss Tian's talents. I thought tonight would be an excellent opportunity for you two to connect. The implication hung heavy in the air. Stella subtly appraised the man opposite her. Mr. Zhao's eyes lingered on her, openly assessing, making no attempt to hide his interest. She understood Julian's game instantly. Julian Lu owned the film production company she was signed with. Their interactions had been minimal, professional. He was the boss, she was a rising star. He'd recognized her talent, poured resources into her career, and she had delivered, starring in hit after hit. But ever since discovering he was Isabelle Qin's boyfriend, Stella had watched him closely, studying his vulnerabilities. He had, unknowingly, become a pawn in her plan to secure Adrian's happiness, to drive a wedge between Julian and Isabelle. To ensure he wouldn't interfere with Adrian's chances, Stella had made a reckless, calculated move. She had drugged Julian, ensuring compromising photos were taken, photos suggesting infidelity, photos she made sure Isabelle received just before the mysterious accident that supposedly caused Isabelle's amnesia. It was a desperate, dangerous gamble. She hadn't anticipated Julian discovering her role, let alone his reaction. He'd stormed to her adoptive parents, revealed the scandal, and demanded her hand in marriage. Rejected furiously by Stella, he'd laid bare the entire sordid tale to her horrified parents. Trapped by societal pressure and fear of scandal, they had forced her into this marriage, a marriage Julian clearly intended as punishment. Mr. Zhao, Stella greeted politely, forcing a smile. Zhao, you beamed back. Miss Tian, more beautiful every time I see you. You flatter me, Mr. Zhao, Stella replied with practiced grace. Not at all, just stating facts. Zhao chuckled heartily. Julian sat silently, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips, observing the exchange. Miss Tian, join me for a drink. Zhao poured a generous measure of potent baijiu into a small glass and pushed it towards her. Stella's stomach clenched. She kept her smile fixed, nodding slightly. Of course. They toasted, and both downed the fiery liquor. Excellent tolerance, Miss Tian. Another. Zhao immediately refilled her glass. The smile remained plastered on Stella's face, but inwardly, she winced. Before her career took off, navigating endless obligatory dinners and drinking rituals had been part of the game. Once, she'd drunk herself into alcohol poisoning, ending up in the hospital. It was Adrian Li who had picked her up, heard the doctor's stern warnings, his face filled with self-reproach. Adrian, Ethan Chun, and Stella's older brother, Wei Tian, had been comrades, brothers in arms in a dangerous past life. Wei had sacrificed himself to save Adrian and Ethan during a mission against terrorists, dying heroically. After Wei's death, Stella became an orphan. Adrian and Ethan became her guardians. Though lacking experience raising a girl, they ensured she was placed with a decent adoptive family, vetted them thoroughly, and sent monthly support payments. Stella, grateful but fiercely independent, accepted the financial help but otherwise navigated life on her own. It was after the drinking incident, when Adrian learned of her acting ambitions, that he secretly intervened, leveraging his connections to get her signed with Julian Lu's prestigious company. From then on, her career soared, and the forced drinking sessions became a thing of the past. She grew closer to Adrian and Ethan, eventually falling deeply, hopelessly in love with Adrian, the protective older brother figure. But he maintained a careful distance, his affection purely platonic. The more he held back, the deeper her love grew, turning into an aching obsession. Seeing him suffer over Isabelle had fueled her desperate plan. Miss Tian, come, Zhao urged, pouring yet another glass. He seemed intent on getting her drunk. A wave of nausea rose in Stella's throat. She pressed a hand to her chest, glancing pleadingly at Julian. He sat impassively, a cigarette smoldering between his fingers, the red glow reflecting in his dark eyes. He offered no help. Taking a deep breath, Stella forced down the rising bile. Excuse me, Mr. Zhao. she said, standing abruptly. I need to use the restroom. Zhao nodded agreeably. She swayed slightly as she walked towards the door, the potent alcohol already blurring her vision. In the restroom, she leaned over the sink, dry heaving. Then, a violent wave hit her. She retched, splashing cold water on her face afterwards to clear her head. But another spasm seized her, and this time, when she vomited into the pristine white basin, the water swirled pink, then red. Blood. Stella froze, staring at the crimson evidence in the sink, her mind reeling. Suddenly, strong hands grasped her shoulders from behind. She whirled around. Mr. Zhao. She pushed him away instinctively. Miss Tian. Zhao slurred slightly, though his eyes were sharp. I'm a direct man. Be with me. What do you say? Mr. Zhao, you've had too much to drink, Stella deflected, trying to smile, subtly blocking his view of the sink. Come now, Miss Tian. Zhao persisted, clearly not as drunk as he appeared. Your boss brought you here tonight. You know what? Stella leaned back against the counter, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Mr. Zhao, I am an actress signed to Mr. Lu's company. I am not his property to be traded. Whatever his intentions are, they have nothing to do with me. Haha, I like your spirit, Miss Tian. Zhao laughed loudly. Just then, the restroom door opened, and Julian walked in. Zhao turned. Mr. Lu, your Miss Tian is quite the prickly pear. Julian offered a humorless smile. Don't worry, Mr. Zhao. I'll pluck out her thorns before I send her over to you. Haha, excellent. Always a pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Lu. Zhao clapped Julian on the shoulder and swaggered out. Alone now, Julian's cold gaze fell upon Stella. Did you really think you could escape, Stella? She met his eyes, a defiant spark igniting within her despite her fear and nausea. Mr. Lu, she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. So eager to put horns on your own head? His face darkened instantly. He lunged forward, his hand clamping around her throat, pressing her against the cold tile wall. Stella, he hissed, his voice dangerously low. Everything you did, I will make you repay it. 10-fold. 100-fold. Stella choked, clawing weakly at his hand, yet her eyes still held a defiant glint. So what if I repay you? You'll still never have her back. You're asking for death. Julian's grip tightened. Then, his peripheral vision caught the splash of red in the sink. He froze, his grip slackening. Slightly, his gaze flickered from the blood back to her face. What happened? He demanded, the fury in his voice momentarily replaced by confusion. Stella pushed him away, gasping for air. She glanced at the sink, then met his eyes defiantly. I vomited, she stated simply. Julian looked surprised. Didn't she realize the implications? And you're not concerned? His voice was sharper now, probing. Why should I be? It's just a little blood, Stella shrugged, affecting nonchalance. Suddenly, dizziness washed over her. She swayed, and, before she could fall, Julian caught her, scooping her up into his arms. She instinctively grabbed his lapels. What are you doing? He didn't answer, just carried her swiftly out of the restroom. Julian, Stella murmured, her head resting against his shoulder as he carried her through the restaurant. I don't feel well. Please don't send me to Mr. Zhao. This time, Julian answered, his voice flat. Your discomfort is none of my concern. But if I'm unwell, she argued weakly, I can't serve Mr. Zhao properly. Won't that cause trouble for you? A minor annoyance like Zhao Yu means nothing to me, he scoffed. Then why did you make me drink with him? She whispered, looking up at his face. He glanced down at her pale face, the stubborn set of her jaw even now. You love Adrian Lee so much, he countered, his voice low and intense. Why did you help me? It was the question that had gnawed at him, the contradiction he couldn't reconcile. Why sabotage her own supposed desires? Help who? Stella mumbled, the alcohol and exhaustion making her confused. Stella, what kind of woman are you? The question escaped him, laced with more than just hatred now. There was a grudging curiosity, a bewildered fascination. He couldn't understand her motivations. If she loved Adrian, why not fight for him directly instead of resorting to such convoluted, self-destructive schemes? Julian gently placed Stella in the passenger seat of his car, leaning over to fasten her seatbelt. As he straightened up, she grabbed his sleeve. I told you, she whispered, her eyes hazy but focused on his face, a faint, sad smile touching her lips. When he hurts, I hurt too. He froze, looking down at her intoxicated, vulnerable face. For a fleeting moment, her expression reminded him of Isabelle, the same hint of underlying sadness. Shaking off the thought, he shut the door firmly, walked around, and got into the driver's seat, starting the engine. Thank you, Stella murmured drowsily as the car pulled away. For what? Julian asked curtly. For taking me away, she sighed, leaning her head back against the seat. A cold laugh escaped him. Don't misunderstand. I'm taking you to his home. Stella closed her eyes, whispering almost inaudibly, Julian, I'm your wife. Don't be so cruel. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. He glanced sideways at her sleeping form, but said nothing. Half an hour later, the car pulled up, not at Zhao Yu's residence, but in front of the city's main hospital. Stella was deeply unconscious. Stella woke the next morning to the unfamiliar sterility of a hospital room. Her head pounded. She sat up slowly, looking around, confused. The door opened, and Julian walked in, his expression unreadable. You're awake, he stated flatly. Get dressed. We're leaving. You brought me here, she asked, bewildered. Who else? Zhao Yu. Julian sneered. Stella pressed her lips together, then swung her legs out of bed. She noticed a bag on the sofa, walked over, and opened it. Inside was a fresh set of clothes. She held them up. They looked like her size. Mr. Lu, she said, turning back to him, regaining a semblance of composure. Could you please step outside? I need to change. A mocking smile touched Julian's lips. Miss Tian, still concerned with propriety? His words hit her like a slap, bringing back the humiliating memory of the night she drugged and bound him, forcing herself on him to create the evidence she needed. She recalled the murderous fury in his eyes then. If he'd had a weapon, she had no doubt he would have used it. Yes, Stella replied coolly, nodding slightly. You've already seen everything anyway. Without further hesitation, she turned her back and began unfastening the hospital gown. As the gown slipped, revealing the smooth skin of her back, Julian's gaze flickered. The memory of that night surged, his drugged helplessness, her strange mixture of determination and pain. Even then, drugged and enraged, some part of him had registered her anguish. Suddenly, the door burst open again. Stella gasped, instinctively clutching the clothes to her chest. Simultaneously, Julian reacted without thinking, shrugging off his suit jacket and swiftly moving behind her, draping it over her shoulders. Ah, Mr. Lu, Victor Fong, Stella's agent, entered, stopping short at the scene, Julian standing protectively behind a partially clad, flustered Stella. Victor, Julian acknowledged curtly. Mr. Lu, Victor began, his eyes darting towards Stella. Miss Tian's new drama starts filming soon. Director who needs her to go over some script details. I know, Julian replied calmly. His gaze shifted back to Stella, his body subtly shielding her from Victor's view. You can go back first. But, Victor hesitated. I'll bring her to the studio later, Julian stated firmly. Victor paused, surprised, then nodded slowly. All right, Mr. Lu. He cast one last, lingering look at Stella before turning and leaving. Once the door closed, Stella whispered, Thank you. I have no desire for others to see my wife undressed, Julian retorted coldly, though his eyes held a flicker of something less harsh. Stella froze, staring at him, a strange feeling stirring within her. This Julian felt different from the vengeful man of yesterday. Well, get dressed, Julian snapped impatiently, turning away. Oh, right. Stella quickly finished changing. Outside the film studio, Julian pulled the car over. Stella opened the door. Thank you, she said again, softly, before closing the door and hurrying inside. Julian watched her go, frowning, unsettled by his own actions. Why had he protected her? Why, seeing her in pain after the stomach pumping, had he felt a pang of pity? He lit another cigarette, inhaling deeply, trying to quell the confusing turmoil inside. He pulled out his phone, dialing Ethan Chun. What are you doing? Ethan's voice was groggy on the other end. Sleeping, obviously. Get up. Drinks. There was a pause, then a sigh. Julian, are you treating Baijiu like water again? Do you know what time it is? Let's talk. Get out here. Julian snapped, inhaling sharply. Man, Ethan's voice turned serious. She's married. Let it go. Stop torturing yourself. Shut up and meet me, or I'm coming over there. Julian growled. Julian, honestly. Ethan persisted gently. Isabelle Qin isn't worthy of this. If she didn't want to marry you, fine. But she should have been honest, didn't love you, whatever. Faking amnesia, that's low. Julian gripped the phone tighter, a fresh wave of pain washing over him. You need to look forward, man, Ethan urged. You'll find someone better. Julian hung up without replying. Find someone better? He only wanted Isabelle. But then, Stella's face flashed in his mind, defiant, vulnerable, complicated. A surge of conflicting emotions, hatred, curiosity, pity, left him feeling utterly lost. He stubbed out the cigarette, got out of the car, and strode towards the studio entrance. Stella pushed open the door to the dressing room assigned to her, expecting it to be empty. She stopped short. Victor Fong was sitting there, waiting. She hesitated, about to retreat. Stella, he called out softly. Is there something you need? She asked, pausing in the doorway. Victor smiled, his eyes intense. Stella, did you simply ignore what I told you? I don't know what you mean, she mumbled, looking down. He rose, walking towards her, his smile never wavering, though his eyes held a chilling depth. He patted the seat beside where he'd been sitting. Come sit. Director who is waiting for me, she deflected. He's not expecting you. I wanted to see you, Victor stated calmly. What about? She asked warily. He stopped a few paces away. Stella, you interfered with my plans. Tell me, how should I punish you? Fear washed over Stella, blanching her face. Seeing her reaction, Victor chuckled softly, reaching out to gently pat her cheek. Relax. Don't be scared. What could I possibly do to you? Stella instinctively recoiled. Victor, she pleaded, her voice trembling slightly. I have some savings. I'll give them all to you. Please, just let me go. Give me back those photos. What? Use me and discard me, he asked, raising an eyebrow, his tone dangerously light. Stella bit her lip, trapped. If only she hadn't been so stubborn. If only she'd accepted Adrian's help and protection earlier, she wouldn't be caught in Victor Feng's web now. Victor, the company's most notorious agent, had approached her soon after she joined, offering to represent her. Flattered, she'd accepted. Only later did she discover his true motives, using her connection to Adrian and Ethan to get close to them. He knew everything, her past, her unrequited love for Adrian. He'd promised to help her win Adrian's heart. She'd been naive, hopeful, but his methods, his suggestions, grew increasingly dark, frightening. It was he who orchestrated Isabelle's accident, he who supplied the compromising photos. He wanted Adrian free for Stella, yes, but for his own twisted reasons. What do you really want? Stella asked desperately. What do I want? Victor's smile turned predatory. He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to stroke her face again. Isn't it obvious? I want you. Stella froze, horrified, her face paling further. Stella, he murmured, leaning closer, his breath warm on her skin. Haven't I been good to you? She jerked her head back, creating distance. Victor, I won't expose you. Just give me back the photos. Please, let's go our separate ways. Separate ways? He laughed coldly. Stella, everything I did for you. How can you abandon me now? Stop it. Stella pushed him away forcefully. That was your doing, not mine. It has nothing to do with me. She hadn't asked him to harm Isabelle. His initial promises to help her when Adrian had faded when she accepted Adrian only saw her as a sister. She'd overheard Victor on the phone, discussing the accident, realized the depths of his manipulation, and tried to warn Adrian, only for Victor to catch her, assault her, and take compromising photos to ensure her silence. Stella, still not behaving? Victor watched her, his expression unreadable. Victor, what good does harassing me do you? She demanded, glaring at him. The benefits? His lips curled into a sly smile. The usual benefits between a man and a woman, of course. I'm married, Stella stated firmly. Married? So what? Victor scoffed, crossing his arms. Didn't Julian Lu just hand you over to another man? That's because I owe him, Stella retorted, flushing slightly. Whatever he does, I accept it. Hearing this, Victor's expression darkened. He can treat you like that, but I can't have you? Stella didn't want to argue further. He felt like a madman. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm tightly. Stella, he hissed, his voice low and menacing. If I could take those photos, I can take you. Let go. Stella struggled, trying to pry his fingers off her arm. Just then, Julian's voice sounded from the doorway. Stella. Both froze. Stella was visible from the hall. Victor was inside, momentarily hidden. As Julian approached, Victor released her arm. Stella turned, startled, her heart pounding. Mr. Lu, her expression was flustered, unnatural. Julian's sharp eyes fixed on her face, scrutinizing her. Mr. Lu, Victor stepped smoothly into view from inside the room. Julian's gaze shifted from Stella to Victor, his brow furrowing slightly. Mr. Lu, what brings you here? Stella asked quickly. His attention snapped back to her. Weren't you supposed to see Director Hu? Ah, yes. Stella nodded quickly. Go on then. I'll wait here, Julian instructed. Stella hesitated, then nodded again and hurried down the corridor. Victor watched her go, then turned to Julian. Mr. Lu, I should get back to work. He started to walk past, but Julian stopped him. Wait. Victor paused, turning back to face Julian. Come in, Julian commanded, walking back into the dressing room. He sat down on the small sofa, leaning back, regarding Victor coolly. There's a new film project. Needs a lead actress, supporting actress. Your artists. Hearing Julian discuss business, Victor visibly relaxed, assuming that was the purpose of this impromptu meeting. An hour later, Stella returned to the dressing room. Julian was alone, scrolling through his phone. The relief was immense. Victor was gone. "Mr. Lu," she greeted him cautiously. Julian looked up, his gaze sweeping over her. "What do you think of Victor Fong?" he asked casually. Stella stiffened, surprised by the question. Seeing her hesitation, Julian frowned. "I asked you a question." He's all right," Stella answered vaguely. "All right," meaning not a particularly good agent. Julian pressed, a knowing look in his eyes. Stella remained silent. "You're my wife now," Julian stated abruptly, standing up. "Naturally, certain resources should be prioritized for you." He walked towards the door, leaving Stella bewildered by his cryptic words. She understood 2 weeks later. After another industry dinner function, Stella made her excuses to leave, only to be intercepted in the corridor by Mr. Zhao. "Leaving so soon, Miss Tian?" "Mr. Zhao, it's late. I need to get home," Stella replied politely but firmly. "Nonsense. Come, let's retire to my hotel suite for a nightcap." Zhao slurred, clearly intoxicated, reaching for her arm. "Mr. Zhao." Stella began to refuse, but Victor Fong suddenly appeared behind them. "Stella," Victor instructed coolly, "Mr. Zhao wishes to retire. Accompany him." Stella stared at him, stunned. "Accompany him? To his hotel? Who does he think he is?" "Mr. Fong, what did you just say?" she asked, disbelief coloring her tone. "It's Mr. Lu's directive," Victor stated flatly, meeting her gaze. "He instructed you to escort Mr. Zhao back to his hotel." The words hit her like a physical blow. Julian, he was still punishing her. "Fine," she choked out. "Come along, Miss Tian." Zhao draped a heavy arm over her shoulders. As they passed Victor, he leaned in, whispering in her ear, "Stella, just say the word. Agree to be with me, and you won't have to go with him." Stella glanced at him, her expression unreadable, then turned back, supporting the stumbling Zhao. "Mr. Zhao, allow me." Good, good. Let's go." Zhao shuffled towards the exit. Victor watched them leave, his face twisting into an ugly mask of resentment. If only she weren't so stubborn. If she'd just given him her heart, he would have cherished her, abandoned his quest for vengeance. He had initially approached Stella solely to get close to Adrian Li, the man who had killed his older brother, Ju Feng. Ju had fallen in with terrorists, a path of no return, but Victor still blamed Adrian for his death. He planned to use Stella's affection for Adrian to destroy him. But somewhere along the way, his pity for Stella, her vulnerability, had morphed into a possessive obsession. He decided to give up revenge, if only she would choose him. But her heart remained fixed on Adrian. Even after orchestrating Isabelle's accident to clear the path, Stella ended up marrying Julian Lu instead. Fine. If he couldn't have her, he would destroy her. Inside the hotel room, Stella deposited the heavily intoxicated Zhao onto the bed and turned to leave. But Zhao, suddenly wide awake and sober, grabbed her arm. "Where do you think you're going, Miss Tian?" His voice was clear, sharp. Stella stared at him, then yanked her arm free. "Mr. Zhao," she said coldly, "are you expecting me to spend the night?" He sat up, grinning. "Naturally." "Do you know who I am?" she asked pointedly. "Who?" he countered, intrigued. "My husband is Julian Lu," Stella stated flatly, hoping the name carried weight. Before Zhao could react, she turned and walked out. As she reached the door, Zhao called after her, recovering quickly. "Miss Tian, everyone in the industry knows Mr. Lu has a childhood sweetheart he grew up with." His implication was clear. Stella paused, turning back. "And Mr. Zhao?" she retorted coolly. "Surely you know who the CEO of Li Corporation married a few months ago?" Zhao froze, the connection clicking into place. One man's old flame is often another man's new love, Stella finished cuttingly, then swept out of the room, leaving him speechless. Julian had just landed, exhausted, settling into the car when his phone rang. He glanced at the ID Zhao Yu. Annoyed, he answered. "Mr. Lu." Zhao's voice was laced with accusation. "What exactly is your relationship with Stella Tian?" Julian frowned. "What do you mean?" "She just walked out of my hotel room, claiming to be your wife." Julian's blood ran cold. "What did you do to her?" he demanded, his voice dropping several degrees. The icy tone gave Zhao pause. "Speak," Julian commanded, his voice devoid of warmth. "What could I do?" Zhao retorted defensively. "She's your woman, Mr. Lu. I'm not that desperate." After hanging up, Julian barked at Kevin Schur. "Faster." The car surged forward. When Julian burst into their shared apartment, Stella was in the bedroom, packing a suitcase. "You want to see Zhao Yu?" he demanded. Stella nodded mutely. He strode over, pulled her roughly away from the suitcase, and pushed her down onto the bed, looming over her. "He didn't touch you?" The question was low, intense. Stella stared up at him, momentarily stunned, then slowly shook her head. No. Stay away from him from now on, Julian ordered gruffly. There won't be a from now on, Stella whispered. Julian froze, his gaze flicking to the open suitcase. You're leaving? Yes, she nodded. A cold smile twisted his lips. Have you forgotten you're married? Julian, I'm sorry, Stella said quietly, looking down. I know what I did was wrong. You deserve someone better. Do you think saying sorry now changes anything, Stella? He straightened up, looking down at her. I'm sorry, she repeated, unable to meet his eyes. And you think a simple sorry makes up for it? He leaned down again, trapping her on the bed. Julian, she whispered, trembling slightly as his face drew close. He didn't answer, just crushed his lips against hers. The next morning, Stella woke first. She looked at the man sleeping beside her, his face softer in repose, then carefully eased herself out of bed. As she reached the edge, his voice, low and husky, stopped her. Where are you going? She turned, meeting his now open eyes, but didn't answer. Last night. His initial anger had dissolved into something else, something unexpectedly tender. When tears had escaped her eyes, he had gently kissed them away, a silent comfort that had shaken her resolve. Julian reached out, capturing her hand, his gaze holding hers. After a long moment, he spoke. Let's just stay like this. Stella froze, staring at him, disbelief warring with a flicker of fragile hope. Loving her? What's the point? Julian murmured, almost to himself. She'll never belong to me. During his business trip, he had seen Adrian and Isabelle together, witnessed their easy intimacy, their shared happiness. In that moment, unexpectedly, he had thought of Stella. He still didn't understand why Isabelle had truly left him, but Stella, her manipulations, however misguided, had been laid bare. Comparing the two women, a startling realization dawned. Stella, with all her flaws and complexities, felt real. Perhaps she was the one he could build a life with. Stella shook her head slowly. Julian, we can't. Why not? Is there something you're still hiding? He asked, searching her face. She bit her lip, hesitating. He sat up, pulling her gently into his arms. You orchestrated getting rid of my fiancé, he said, his tone surprisingly calm, almost teasing. What else could possibly be worse than that? Taking a deep breath, Stella finally confessed everything. Victor Feng's manipulation, the staged accident, the photos, the threats, her fear. Julian listened, his expression growing increasingly grim. When she finished, he released her, picked up his phone from the nightstand, and dialed a number. It's Julian Lu, he stated tersely. Your wife's car accident, it wasn't an accident. On the other end, Adrian Lee, just waking up, listened intently as Julian relayed Stella's entire story. When Julian finished, there was a moment of silence. What do you propose? Adrian asked finally, his voice dangerously calm. We work together, Julian stated. Take him down. Agreed, Adrian replied without hesitation. Julian ended the call and got out of bed to dress. He glanced back at Stella, who sat watching him, looking lost and uncertain. Stay home, he said, walking over and gently ruffling her hair. Stay safe. Then he left. Isabelle watched Adrian leave without eating breakfast, a worried frown on her face. Where are you going in such a hurry? Where else? Adrian paused at the door, a wry smile touching his lips. To meet your old flame. Adrian. Isabelle swatted his arm playfully. He quickly explained the situation, Julian's call, the truth about Victor Feng and the accident. Isabelle listened, her eyes widening in shock, then hardening with anger. That Victor Feng, he's despicable. Adrian shrugged, his smile returning. In a way, I should thank him. If it weren't for his meddling, how would I have ended up married to you? Isabelle glared at him. But Julian, I feel so guilty. No need, Adrian said smoothly. He has his own wife now. Who? Isabelle asked, surprised. Stella Tian. Them? How did they end up together? Isabelle exclaimed. Ah, that's a long story, Adrian chuckled, opening the door. Why don't you call Stella and ask her yourself? I have to go. He winked and left. Isabelle stared after him for a moment, then reached for her phone, dialing Stella's number. Victor Feng never imagined his carefully laid plans would unravel so spectacularly, leading not to Stella's destruction, but his own. One sun-drenched afternoon, the four of them, Stella and Julian, Isabelle and Adrian, sat together in the relaxed atmosphere of a golf course clubhouse terrace. Julian, I am so truly sorry, Isabelle said sincerely, meeting his gaze. After the accident, I believed the photos. I didn't question, I just reacted. Julian looked at her, then glanced at Stella beside him, a soft, genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. If it weren't for your decisiveness, Isabelle, he said quietly, how would I have ever found Stella? He turned his gaze fully to Stella, his expression filled with a gentle warmth she'd never seen before. Stella flushed, lowering her eyes. "It was all my fault," she murmured. "Fault? What fault?" Adrian interjected cheerfully. "Everything turned out perfectly, didn't it?" 3 pairs of eyes turned to him. In this tangled web, Adrian Lee was undeniably the biggest winner. He grinned unabashedly. "Julian," he said, picking up his golf club, "fancy a round?" "Gladly." Julian nodded, rising to join him. The 2 men walked out onto the green, silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun. The 2 women watched them go, a comfortable silence settling between them, filled with unspoken understanding and the promise of new beginnings. End.